Hello and welcome to the kitchen with K&C Taxidermy. We're trying something new and we hope that maybe new people will join us and subscribe. Don't forget to go to our YouTube page and subscribe to K&C Taxidermy. We're going to be trying to some recipes, to share some recipes with you guys. I know a popular hunting season, the guys like to make with their deer is venison jerky. So we figured we'd start with that. I know a lot of people may not necessarily like to cook and eat wild game, but most people I know like jerky. So I'm going to show you a marinade that we use. It's a teriyaki marinade, but it's a simple, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ingredients to make this marinade. You can let it sit from anywhere from 8 to 24 hours in the fridge, and then you're ready to either put it in your smoker or in your oven. We're going to do an oven jerky and a smoker jerky. We're going to do both so that you can do your preference, but I'm going to do a test because I have a new smoker that I have not tried to do jerky in yet. So I would like to try to do that. So I'm going to do that with you guys. So maybe you can try something new as well. So first what we're going to do is start off by making the marinade. Before I even slice the meat and start handling the meat, I go ahead and prep by making the marinade. And since I have about 5 pounds of meat, this recipe is by per pound of meat, and I have 5 pounds. So what I'm going to do, I have 2.5 cups of soy sauce. Okay, we'll start with that. And then we've got 5 tablespoons of rice vinegar. And all of these ingredients can be found at your local grocery stores. There's nothing fancy here. And then we've got, like I said, because I've got 5 pounds of meat, I've got 10 tablespoons of honey. And this is a local honey that I've chosen to use. Okay, we've got our honey. And then next is going to be 10 tablespoons of brown sugar. Just dump that on in there. Okay, and sesame oil is next. And I've got 5 teaspoons of sesame oil. And then I've got 5 teaspoons, I believe. Yeah, 5 teaspoons of garlic powder and 5 teaspoons of ginger. Okay, and that's it for as far as our ingredients. And then we're just going to mix them together. And then once we get all these ingredients mixed up, we're going to set this aside. And we are going to slice our meat. Now, a thing about our meat is that we're going to leave it, I took it out of the freezer a little bit ago. We're going to leave it partially frozen because it's easier to slice. And if you want thicker or thinner slices, it's easier to slice your raw meat if you're cutting it by hand, if you don't, and even if you have a slicer, but it's easier to work with if you leave it partially frozen. Also, I like to use the cut of meat that I like to use, preferably for me, is the hams, either the back hams or the front shoulder hams, because especially on my smaller deer or my does and stuff like that, because I use you can use them for roasts and stuff like that. I'll make, for crock pot roasts and stuff, but I usually say reserve those for jerky because I like to keep my back straps and stuff like that for grilling. I prefer to eat those straight up. I don't like to waste those on jerky myself. A lot of people do. They do make really good jerky, but to me that's a prime cut of meat, and I'm not going to use that for jerky. So I use the hams. So anyways, I'm going to finish stirring this up, and then we're going to start slicing our meat and adding it to this marinade to sit for 8 to 24 hours in the refrigerator. Now, right now I'm just using, as you could see, there was clumps of garlic powder and ginger and stuff that kind of solidified. I'm just using my whisk real quick to break up any clumps and make sure everything's well blended and stirred. And also the honey likes to stick to the bottom of the bowl, so I'm just making sure everything is stirred up. And some people might be asking, why didn't you add any curing salt or anything like that? Well, if you think about it, the soy sauce, it has a very high salt content, so that's acting as your curing agent in this process, in this recipe. So if you're asking why there isn't any, there's no need to add any curing salt or any kind of salt, because the soy sauce has got that covered. Also, remember, the longer you leave it in the fridge or the longer you leave it in the marinade, the saltier it will be. So if you don't want it super salty, leave it in for 8 hours, not 24. Okay, leave it in for less. So that's something you want to remember. It's going to be, you leave it in for 48 hours, it's going to be like a salt block. Okay, it's going to be like licking, you're going down to your deer blind and licking the salt block. Okay, it's not, warning. Okay, so anywho, that's just something FYI. You're going to want to remember that. All right, so we got this all stirred up. Now we're going to start prepping our meat. I've got it thawed out just a little bit, partially, but like I said, that partially frozen meat, it's still going to be firm and easier to cut. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, now here we have what's part of the back ham, and it looks like it's more part of like the ball ham. I wanted to show you the silver skin, so I didn't take this off because on recipes, when you're talking about wild game recipes, when they say remove, make sure you remove the silver skin, tendons, yada yada yada, that kind of stuff. This is what they're talking about. This, you can see it, and that's why they call it silver skin. You can see it. It has a sheen to it. And this is what we're going to make sure that we are going to remove. Because that can give it the gamey taste. It's not as bad on the backside here, but it's usually more on the surface. So what I'm going to do, let me see the best way. Looks like this part's going to pull up the best. See that how it usually comes up pretty, and then I usually start just kind of like filleting it. Like that. But that's what you want to remove. You want to remove that silver skin. Okay, when you pretty much get all that removed, then what we're going to do, you can see really well where that, I'm going to go ahead and remove this piece here because it's kind of out of place here. It's going to make for a loose piece. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this little, which that could be its own, just about. All right, so then you can see really well the grain of the meat. The lines in the meat, the grain of the meat that goes this way. So we're going to slice against the grain to start slicing for our jerky. And we're going to do long. I usually do, if as far as cooking time goes, and if you want your meat to cure and dry properly and make sure you get all the moisture out of your meat. Remember, you're making jerky, not steaks. So you want to do thinner slices. I probably about, I think usually typically it's 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch is typically ideal for slicing the width of the slices for drying out for jerky. So, and I usually do typically from, because remember there's going to be some shrinkage once in the drying process. So if you do a piece that's, it's going to be half of what it was, usually typically around half of what the length was. If you do say an 8 to 10 inch slice of meat, it's going to be about 4 to 5 inches after it's done drying. So that's just something to keep in mind. When if you cut really small pieces, they're going to be crumbs once you get them out of the oven or whatever. So that's something you're going to want to think about when you're slicing your meat for jerky. Now, as far as how some people like to do the sheet jerky, you know, like you can do however wide you want to. But as far as length goes, you know, you're going to want to make sure it's not, so it doesn't come out like this long, you know. But anyways, so I'm going to, let me see how I'm going to start. I think I'm going to go this way because this grain is going this way. So I might have to start some, and which way is it going? Okay, so these, I'm going to have to get these little pieces off first. But as you can see, it's going to start, see how much it's not smashing down. It's thinning, it's cutting very nicely and easily while it's still partially frozen. So that's what we're going to want. That's why we want to still have it a little icy, like a meat slushy. Now that we've got our venison ham sliced up, and for me, as you can see, it's just a beautiful slice of meat. It's not fatty. I mean, this is just lean. It almost looks like a nice rich liver. It's just beautiful. You don't have the marbling and the fat like you do in beef or anything else. It's just a beautiful piece of meat, very rich in color. And to me, in flavor, I actually prefer it. It's just beautiful, clean meat, and natural. So anyways, and once you get it cut, it starts thawing out quickly. So it's going to start getting droopy. But we've got our marinade here. And now we're just going to start taking our slices. And we're just going to start, I usually just kind of stir it up a little bit with the first piece of meat and then just start laying them in there. We're just going to go ahead and start putting them in. And some of these little pieces, the end pieces and stuff, I go ahead and I throw them in there. I mean, if there's some crumbs, they make little good treats for the dogs. You know, dogs deserve a little goodie too. I don't like to waste things. If y'all are like, well, why is she putting that little pieces in there? Well, because the dogs like it too. I don't mind to put some burn ends in there for the dogs. So we'll do some for them too. I'm not gonna waste it. I'm not gonna waste it. And sometimes I have the iron skillet going, or I'll toss them in there and fry them up, and I'll be eating that while I'm You don't get to look like this by starving to death. Anyways, so I'm going to finish up putting my meat in here. And this is, remember, this is going to sit for 8 to 24 hours. And remember, our big pointer is the longer you let it sit, the saltier it will be. So remember that. If you only want it to sit for 8 hours, if you don't want it to be super salty or super strong, I mean, you can smell when you mix up this, you can smell the seasoning and you can get an idea of what it's going to taste like. So, and if you want it to taste stronger, then more power to you. And if you want to doctor it up and do your own thing, you do that too. Sometimes I add a little more sesame oil and sometimes I add a little more garlic. Depends on what mood I'm in. But you can do your own thing. This is actually a recipe my mother has made ever since I can remember. And everybody, even people never even knew it was venison. And she would make bags of it and it'd be gone probably in a week. And of course, as you know, with homemade jerky, you can keep it in the refrigerator if it's dried out properly. It can stay in the refrigerator for weeks, but it can stay forever in the freezer. To properly store it, you're going to want, for long-term storage, you're going to want to keep it in the freezer. And just take it out a little bit at a time. Usually what I do is I do the little quart-size bags, and then you can take it out as needed for if you're making large batches. So that way it doesn't go to waste, because if it does sit in the refrigerator, even though it's smoked meat in the refrigerator for a long time, moisture is still going to get, it's going to have the same effect on it as anything else. So it's not, say, you know, a canned, or I guess like you said, cured meat or something, you know, something like that. It's still perishable, I guess you would say. It's the term would be perishable. It is, I mean, it'll last a little longer, but it is still perishable. That's something to keep in mind. You're not going to leave it out on the countertop. All right. So we're going to get that other ham cut up, add that to this, put the lid on, put it in the refrigerator for overnight, and we will be back with, and I'll be showing you my oven method and the new smoker method. We'll be trying that one for the first time. So join us then. Hi guys, and welcome back to K&C Taxidermy. Be sure to subscribe to our page so you can be part of all the stuff we're going to be doing this summer. You can see we're going to be doing a red stag. Last year we did the oryx. This year the exotic is the red stag. So if you want to be part of our Q&As and when we go live and get notifications for that, be sure you subscribe to our page at K&C Taxidermy, and we'll see you then.